Right, we are back with episode 3 of the United Rebuild. It's 2026 January, we're currently standing ninth in the Prem table. It's definitely not ideal for Amorim, but hopefully with maybe some transfers, maybe some tactical changes, we can turn things around. Looking at the stats, Cunha's been a standout for us, Ahmad's been good as well, and Hoyland's been slightly above expectation, saying that because his expectations are quite low. But I'd say so far in the season, we have played quite well, but it's just sometimes you can play good football, but you're not actually getting much out of it. You're not getting the shots away, and I think that's definitely was sometimes a story last season where we'd have a lot of XG, but we just needed to get the shots away and score. So I think this first game against Norwich was a good example of what we need to do. It was a really good goal to start with as we put in the B team. Angelo's still is starting as well, and Cherky got his start as well. It's a good through ball from Bruno, and Xerxes just put it across nicely for Chido Obi. I think there's a bit of a partnership there between them in real life, so hopefully that can sort of be something that can be built on. Garnacho played well in this game. I think his pace was something that a team like Norwich would struggle with, and when you have so many players that can threaten, even within our midfield, we were almost scoring goals from 30 yards. You just felt like Norwich couldn't handle us in the day. Although it was obviously FA Cup, doesn't mean everything. But it just showed that we weren't completely down and out this season, that we could play well against some teams. Really good to see as well at the end of the game that João Samoas, our new signing from Sporting, that we made in the summer, he had one of his first games, I think at least a full game of sort of minutes. Good finish there, and I think hopefully that's what he can provide. A few decent attacking sort of moments as well as defensive, but overall, yeah, good game from Xerxes and Garnacho especially. We took it over to Fulham away next. It's always been a hard game for us, but it is usually a fixture that we do get the results from. We do get 3 points. Remember last season Martinez scored that deflected 30-40 yard shot, which was probably one of the few wins we had from January last year. If you haven't watched the first 2 episodes from the series, I would recommend that you go back and watch them. But if you have, you will know by now that for each episode I do try to do one long sort of game that goes on for 8 to 10 minutes. In these games I just like to talk about United as a club, just other things, doesn't have to be just about United, but good finish there from Hoyland, decent team goal. I think Fulham seem to struggle to press us there, but so I do like to discuss issues that the club's been facing or just other aspects of football. I think for today's episode, just because of where we are in the summer, I think it would be good to talk about who United should recruit. Obviously, if you've seen the first episode, you will know who I think we should recruit. I think a lot of it did depend on whether we would make Champions League or not. There were some names like Boscagli, obviously Angel Gomez, like players that were on a free that I think we would have probably or should have gone for, had we needed the extra players. But the fact of the matter is that we're not in Europe, so if we're only playing 38 games, we don't really need to just keep recruiting solid, decent players. We need to upgrade the quality of who we have. But that's not to say like our depth isn't an issue, because it definitely was this season, but I think we did have some freak injuries, and I think when you look at players like Heaven, Fredrickson, there's a few others that are sort of like breaking through, like I think Camerson, I think is the third one as well. They seem like really good quality right now, and I think whoever we could buy, I would argue they wouldn't be as good as just bringing a youth player through, because we are privileged in the sense that we do have the best youth system maybe in the world. One thing I would especially say is I do really like Yoro, but I think there's an injury from Ahmad there, so he just had to switch out for Garnacho's come on to the fullback position there. But yeah, quite competitive still so far this game. Of course, Adama Traore, always a threat, of course. And yeah, there you go. Good shot there. Some good build-up, and you could just feel when you got a guy like Traore running around, it's always a threat, and you just feel like you might just get distracted and let top striker like Muniz put the ball away instead. I would say maybe controversial take, but I think if Heaven had played, say if you swapped Heaven and Yoro around, and Heaven had played a season in League One, I think he would definitely bring in the same fee that we paid for Yoro. And I think they are quite, in some sense, like kind of similar players. So they're both good on the ball, both very fast, and that's not to like discount Yoro's ability at all. But I think it's just something to think about where we do have another really good quality player in heaven. We just need to give him game time essentially now. So yeah, I'd say when it comes down to that, we don't need to recruit as many, but it's just again quality. So Cunha, I think that's a really exceptional transfer. Obviously, it was a release clause, and he did want to come to us. He wasn't the cheapest, but I think he's a player that reminds me a bit of Bruno, where he just seems to like care to an extent that I don't always see other United signings care. Like say like Agati, like I like him, but I think he probably saw our project as like an exciting thing to join. A place where he would be starting for like a decently sort of paying European club. I don't get the sense he's like a United fan or anything like that. But Cunha, he just seems like he would generally stay with us even if we're like completely rubbish for a few years, which obviously we don't want to be. But other than him, it's not clear with Mbeumo what his reasons are to join us. If he's a United fan, that's great. I do think he's obviously an exceptional player. And if you get Cunha and Mbeumo, objectively we have to become a better team, surely. Whether that means changing the system slightly because they aren't your typical Amorim cams, to be honest. They're more goal scorers than I'd say playmakers. So that might mean dropping the goal scorer here, Højlund, putting Xerxes in maybe. But I think inevitably Amorim will have to tweak the system to some extent. Yeah, overall unclear whether maybe Thomas Frank might persuade him to come to Spurs instead. End of the day, it is what it is. I think that would be pretty depressing if Spurs did the double over us in terms of like winning the final and then taking a target that we seem to have been stalking for a while. If it doesn't come down to him, or even if we do get him and we still seem to be looking for a striker, Hugo Ekitike, I think he seems really interesting to me. Again, it's not like they have to be United fans to play for us, but he seems to care about the club. He seems to have specifically chosen to join us, even though he's not going to be coming cheap at all. Hearing rumours of 100 mil or something insane like that. But he's not as random as I think some people think he is. I've been aware of him since maybe 2022 or something. Of course, I do remember he was quite an early peak in terms of a striker, and then PSG in their the old era of just not knowing how to handle players. I think they bought him and completely wasted him. So it's good to see he's back in form, and he does remind me of sort of a different, slightly tweaked version of Isak. He's got that lankiness and he's got that ability to run backwards and forwards, which I can't remember. Maybe it was a different episode that I was sort of saying that the striker that Amorim seems to need is a very specific and very complicated striker where it's they can play the target nine. Target nine, that's not a real word. They can play the target forward. They can be a false nine that drops in and helps people out when they need to. But at the same time, they can just dart forward and just basically score the whole goal themselves, which I don't get the sense. Obviously, Gyökeres is a striker he used to have, but if I'm being honest, I don't see. Obviously, he will be a good striker if he comes to the Prem, but I just don't think he'll be as good as people think he might be. And I think he's just one of those guys. I don't know if he's offering an insane amount that's different to say what Højlund in 3 years I think could offer us, because people are still forgetting. I think it's easy to say as a United fan oh, he's young, he'll get to the level he needs to be at. But I know it's very testing every week watching him play just completely rubbish, and then continuing with that idea of oh, don't worry, give him a few years, he'll work it out. Yeah, he's not obviously anything good at the moment, but I do think by the time he's Gyökeres' age, I think if he was developed well, he could be very good, basically. I don't know about as good, but I just don't get the sense that Gyökeres, signing him, will offer something completely different that we needed. But yeah, Ekitike almost seems like a combination of Xerxes and Højlund, which I just find kind of interesting. So yeah, maybe I just seem unreasonably biased towards Ekitike, and I've been a slight doubter of Gyökeres, to be honest, because I think obviously every club is interested in him. It's not as if they're sceptical. I just don't know if he's worth breaking the bank for. And maybe Ekitike is more of a data-driven. I think I watched some videos where it just seems like it's a bit more of a logical signing than Gyökeres is more of a FIFA signing, if that makes sense, where it's more of an Osimhen, where you just get this gut feeling that it's not going to be as good as you think it'll be. And it's just because in stats and like in the news, he just seems like so famous and so good. That might be, you shouldn't let that be like the main reason to get that sort of player. Yeah, like if anything, Gyökeres kind of seems like a old United striker, not a more modern day like data driven player that like teams like Liverpool, Brentford, Brighton like to bring in these players that are like you can literally mathematically explain why you bought them. But yeah, who can say though? I mean, both of them could fail, both of them could succeed. It's very complicated to sort of go either way. Did see a really interesting video though about I think the game's over here. It's a really good game though. I think it got slightly distracted there, but very end to end. Good to see Højlund maybe unrealistically measuring up to the mark. Got a hat trick there as well, which is very impressive. Yeah, I think I'll dip back into that video that I watched a bit later on. But yeah, coming up to fifth, 32 games in, it's a complete turnaround. And following that, Amorim decided to say to the squad, we need to keep our form up for the next few games, especially if he wants to get into top four and get Champions League. We deserve to return to Europe, and I've been impressed with recent performances. I think the squad has been more cohesive as well, and players have really shown their quality. Their comment especially seemed to be directed to Højlund and Garnacho and Bruno, among other players. He finishes out the morning training session by saying, let's prepare for the West Ham away game now. It's always been a tricky game, West Ham away. It's a historical game. Of course, they're in the new stadium now, so it's maybe our luck turns, maybe history will change. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I believe Wan-Bissaka should be against us today. Of course, a complete baller now, someone I was always a big fan of. But yeah, looking at the highlights, some good play here. It just seemed to be a different chemistry that we didn't have in the first half of the year. And yeah, everyone just seemed to know how to find each other. It's a good move here, and Stiller takes the ball. Could have really gone in there, but good save from the keeper. Again, we just kept driving. Højlund was really running the channels here, which is good to see. He had that ability to know that it's not all about him being the goal scorer, but in doing that sort of support role, I think he would find more goals naturally. Unfortunately, Højlund did fall down here. Shouldn't be a huge issue, but good for us. Mavropanos got a red card because of the challenge. Believe it would maybe in the last man challenge, just past the halfway line, which I think does happen quite a lot in FIFA for some reason. It's a good delivery here from Turkey. Decent header. We didn't get that one, but just 75th minute in, Cunha, the difference maker, doing the same thing that he's done for Wolves last year. He just takes the ball, drives in, and yeah, really tidy finish there. Going on from that, we kept the intensity up, we didn't let up. Most times in the Prem now, you can't really hold on to a lead of just 1-0. So yeah, really good drive there and good run. And should have been a second goal really for Cunha, but unfortunately missed. But we still got the 1-0 win there, which carries our form onwards in a good way. We then went on to, I believe, beat Spurs. Very similar goal from Cunha there. Just driving through. Solanke brought it back though, with a bit of a sort of mess in the 6-yard box area. But later on, Turkey, unfortunately since starting this series, Turkey's gone to City, which is pretty heartbreaking to be honest, but he's just sort of showing what he can do here. He almost scored a goal just like this against us for Lyon last year. And Garnacho as well, to be honest. I do hope in some respects he doesn't leave us, because he can just offer this pace and anger and sort of aggression that you don't really get in young players nowadays. And for this game at least, it was enough to get the win, 3-1. With one game to go, we weren't going to get top four, unfortunately, but we decided to therefore rotate the team, give the other players a chance, ending up in a 1-1 draw, which was decent but not too impressive. Looking at the table, good performance from Cunha and Højlund. We seem to dominate with Ahmad Cunha and Fernandes on the assist tally as well, which is, I think, the best case of what could happen next season. I don't think any of those players featuring would be unrealistic. Brentford, Burnley, Sheffield saw the drop. And with that, that closes out the episode. Had a good season there. It was much improved from last year. 5th place, good finish. We'll see next year if we can drive on and maybe win the Europa League.